conversation, and I'm a, what did you call us, old professional now? And so I've had a bunch of these, but I think now more than usual, we are all having difficult conversations. You know, you mentioned furlough a minute ago. You know, it's no secret that the state is asking all of us to cut budgets. You know, so we're facing that in our area. Odds are you've got something in your area that's a challenge right now. But we're going to get through this. We're going to get on the other side of it. And then we're going to be back to sort of the normal, happier, difficult conversations. So things like, I'd like to have a raise, or maybe I'd like a promotion, or maybe I want to be on a different project. Or maybe if you're a manager, you've got to evaluate your employees. Some of what I'm going to talk about even applies in your personal life. You know, maybe you need to have a conversation with your significant other about the way they're behaving, or a life change that you want to make. So there are lots of opportunities to have these difficult conversations. And if you have them well, it really can make a huge difference in the quality of your life and in the trajectory of your career. And so I want to talk just a little bit and give us some basic kind of vocabulary and some framework for this, but I really want to talk to you about conversations that you're thinking about having, or conversations that you've been in. And so I really don't want this to be a long monologue. I really want us to talk about it, because it's going to be more meaningful if we talk through situations that you're feeling. So what separates a difficult conversation or a crucial conversation from any other conversation? Well, generally when we talk about this, we talk about conversations where the stakes are high. You know, if it's a conversation over where you're going to have dinner, which my husband and I have all the time, the stakes aren't high for that, except maybe in the moment. One of us ends up eating, you know, Japanese when the other wanted Mexican or something. But usually the stakes are high, they're meaningful. There's something of importance or consequence or time in the conversation. There's usually a difference of opinions. You know, if you're both on the same page, this is not going to be a hard conversation unless the other person is just a jerk. But generally, the opinions have to be different. There's an honest, legitimate difference in points of view. And there are usually strong emotions attached to this. You know, there's a desire on your part for something, or maybe both of you are emotionally invested in a particular issue. And so there's really an emotional component to the conversation. But you know, if I didn't give you examples, you would be able to tell me anyway, because you know how you feel going into some of these kinds of conversations, right? And that's usually because since the stakes are high and there are emotions involved, and it's probably going to be some sort of push and pull or tussle, it goes beyond the front part of your brain. I'm sorry, I'm one of those teachers. I spent 20 years in the classroom before I became an administrator, and I talk with my hands, and it doesn't work on Zoom very well. But if you see me flopping around, that's what I'm doing. I can't stop. I tried. You know, the front part of your brain is the part of your brain that has all the logic and the reason, and you know how things should go, and you understand how you should behave, and you understand how to manage things. But that's not the part that really takes over when you're in a crucial conversation. It's the lizard brain. It's the part in the back. It's the amygdala. The amygdala is the part of your brain that handles the hardcore emotions, the survival instincts, the fight or flight. It's the thing that tells your body, release all of the adrenaline, because we're about to get into the middle of something and we're going to need that in order to survive. And that's why when you get ready to have these conversations, your heart beats faster, right? It's why you get kind of short of breath. It's why you sweat. I'm not a crier, but I'm a sweater. So, it's like my body is crying when I'm about to have one of these conversations. You have muscle tension, agitation. Some people feel nauseous. It's all those things that, some people feel when they have to do public speaking, right? I taught public speaking to pay my way through graduate school. And, there's a lot of conversation about the fear of public speaking. It's because that fight or flight response is triggered and your body is having all these reactions to all of the adrenaline that's released. And so it causes you sometimes to feel like you dread the situation or you're anxious about it. You'll be up all night the night before. But a crucial conversation is one where you're so invested in it that you kind of have that intense emotional reaction. And sometimes when we have the fight part of the reaction, that's when these conversations turn into, as I told somebody the other day, you yell Dracarys and you go full on Daenerys Targaryen on someone, and there's nothing left but burnt wreckage after it's over, which is not especially productive. And maybe if you don't actually do it, you visualize that in your mind. Or sometimes you avoid the conflict altogether, right? And you flee the conversation, you flee the situation, you put it off, you suck it up, and you just feel miserable after it's over. But the bottom line is that fight or flight sort of dichotomy doesn't get you to where you need to be. Things do not get better unless you have these conversations. The fact that you're so invested in them, the fact that you're emotionally attached to them means that it's meaningful to you. And if you don't resolve the issues at the heart of the conversation, it's just the reason why people end up frustrated and angry and bitter and resentful and burnt out and unhappy at work. So maybe if you feel like you need a raise or you feel like you deserve a promotion and you don't get it and you don't have the conversation, it doesn't just pass you by, right? You end up feeling really unhappy. If you have a relationship and somebody's doing something that makes you crazy and you don't address it, it doesn't go away, right? It just kind of sits there and you continue to feel bad. So you have to figure out how to make a plan to have these conversations in a way that's productive. And so there's really two parts to that. The first part is you have to deal with you first, right? So you have to decide, what is it that I want in this conversation? And that's harder than it seems. Your initial inclination may be, I just want to tell this person off, right? Or I just want them to know I'm unhappy. I want my boss to know I'm frustrated because somebody else got the promotion and not me. I want them to know I deserve a raise. Well, that's a start, right? But what exactly is it that you want them to do? You need some sort of call to action, some sort of specific thing that you're going to ask for. You also need to ask yourself, what do I want from this relationship? Right? And that's a little bit of a harder question to answer. If it's a personal relationship, do you want to stay in it or not? Right? That's a kind of a key fundamental point. If you want to stay in the relationship, then you're going to behave differently than if you want to leave. If you're in a job, what kind of relationship do you want with the person you're talking to? If it's your boss, right? Ideally, you'd like them to invest in you and mentor you and help you along. If it's a coworker, right? Maybe you just want to find a way to coexist well, right? We don't have to be friends. We just have to work together. That's what I want. If it's a subordinate, and maybe you're a manager, maybe you want from the relationship that this person becomes a productive member of your team. But you've got to decide what you want. And then what you want frames your goals for the conversation and sort of sets some boundaries around the kinds of things that you can expect. And then you got to ask, what do you want for the other person? Right? And that's an even harder question to answer. Is it just that you want them to understand you? Well, that seems to kind of shortchange them a little bit. Maybe you want more for them. Maybe you want them to thrive in your relationship. Maybe you want them to understand the value you bring to the organization, and so you want them to succeed, right? But you got to ask yourself, what is it that I want before you walk into the room? Venting is not enough, right? Flaming them is not enough. You've got to decide what it is you want. That tells you where you're going to start. And then the second thing you need to do is to make a plan for the conversation. And to do that, you have to start with the facts. What are the facts that you know? And by facts, I mean observable, objective actions, behaviors, outcomes, right? So say you're interested in a raise. Well, you got to ask yourself, well, how much am I paid? How much are other people like me in the organization being paid? What's fair for me to be paid, right? It can't be, I work hard, I feel like I deserve a raise. You got to start with the facts. If it's a behavioral issue and you feel like someone is unfairly, you have to ask, well, what are the specific behaviors that I'm talking about here? And identify them. And then ask yourself, okay, so those are the facts. What does that mean? When you do that, when you figure out what the facts mean, you've got to do what I call managing your inner monologue. We all have an inner monologue, right? Where we talk to ourselves, it helps us make sense of the world. But sometimes our inner monologue is not right? It exaggerates, it makes stuff up. So here's a great example. When I was in graduate school, my graduate advisor was famous for finding a poor, unwitting graduate student wandering in the hall in the building in the morning. And he would say, why don't you come and see me tomorrow at 4 o'clock? And he wouldn't tell you why. You just had an appointment at 4 o'clock. So what do you think I did between the time of our conversation and 4 o'clock the next day? I imagined in my mind all of the reasons he wanted to talk to me, and none of them were good, right? I'm going to be fired, I'm going to fail, I'm going to be thrown out of the program. And when I would finally go into the office, he would say, yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about this project you're working on, and I know you're busy, so I saw you and took the opportunity to say, how about tomorrow at 4 o'clock? Well, my inner monologue had made me a crazy person between the time we made the appointment and 4 o'clock. My lizard brain was in full effect, right? Because I was making stuff up. And you have to ask yourself, is your inner monologue creating more of a fight or flight reaction in you than is really there? So say you want to talk to your boss about a raise. In between the time you make the appointment to talk to them about the raise and the appointment itself, are you talking to yourself about what their reaction is going to be? Are you making up the conversation before you even have it? Are you right? Oh, they'll never give me a raise because they like this other person better than me. Stick to the facts. Manage your inner monologue. Do not attribute motives or actions or anything to the other party until you know that for sure, until you have objective, observable facts. We do more damage to ourselves with our inner monologues than anybody else does to us. That's how you sort of decide you're a victim or you put yourself in a wrong role. Start with the facts and then talk to the other person. And when you have the conversation, you can say to them, I have observed these facts. I am concerned because those facts might lead me to believe this, and that's negative. And I wanted to talk to you about that. What's the advantage of that approach? You're not accusing them. You're not attributing motives to them. You're stating facts and you're saying, this is one possible interpretation and I'm concerned. So back to the raise example. You talk to your boss and you say, look, I haven't had a raise in a couple of years. I've noticed that some other folks in the office have had raises and my pay seems lower. I am concerned that you do not believe that I have the skills that would move me ahead in the organization, or I'm concerned that you don't perceive that I am performing up to my potential, and I would like to talk to you about that. How is that conversation different than saying, you don't give me a raise and I don't think you like me, right? If you go in telling them what their motives are, telling them your interpretation of the facts and assuming that's correct, then they develop the fight or flight response and you get that same lizard brain reaction from them. But if you go in and say, this is how I could interpret this, I'm concerned about it, can we talk about it? Facts are objective. Facts are sort of in the third person, and it changes the nature of the relationship. If your goals are to have a good relationship, that is a much better way to start the conversation. Ask for their version, right? Sometimes they see things that you don't see. So you say to your boss, tell me, what your impression is of me. And you might learn some things that you didn't know. That can be really hard. They can say to you, you didn't do a great job on that project, or you need to really go get that skill. You got to be willing to hear that, right? Now, it may be that, there's some room to discuss that, but you got to ask for their version of the story and the facts That gives you a way to move forward in the conversation. And at the end of it, then you can make some decisions about how you're going to try to proceed. It may be that you need to have another conversation. It may mean that you need to go away and think about things. If in the conversation you start getting that fight or flight reaction, that's a perfectly acceptable response to say, you know what, I need to go away and think about that. I need to step out and let's try to have another opportunity to talk about that. But it gives you a chance to process what they've said and to go back and see if those facts are actually correct. And then you can sort of adjust your approach to the conversation. But at the end of the day, a crucial conversation, a difficult conversation, is about trying to find a way to have a dialogue with the person that you're talking with, as opposed to a monologue, right? Where you go in and only offer your side and are only open to that. If you go in and draw a line in the sand, those conversations cannot progress, right? So you've got to be open to hearing their version of the facts, and hopefully at the end of the day, coming together with a story that you can both walk out of the conversation with that moves your relationship forward. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for a minute, and I'm going to ask you to think about a conversation that you maybe need to have or have had, and you want to think about how to make that conversation be more effective, or ask what you might do differently, and we'll all work on this together, right? So that it's not a monologue. You have experiences and ideas, and there are things that you may bring to the conversation that are different from mine. But I want you to think about a conversation that you're about to have and how you're about to go about it. And maybe we can test some of your approach. So what do you think, Catherine? Do you think anybody in this group is about to have a crucial conversation?
I'd actually love to ask, it's more of a blanket kind of conversation that ends up being had. I know for a lot of us in YPA, we're either like a senior associate or we're a middle manager. We're at that place where we have a purview over a certain group of people or a certain area of development, but then we also report to someone else. So we're not only having a difficult conversation on behalf of ourselves, but we're representing, you know, managers, a bigger entity. So I know for me, I've had to take that into account a lot, and sometimes it's tough to find where you as a leader fits into you as a member of kind of an ecosystem. So being able to have a conversation that might be, you know, that someone isn't quite performing how you would like them to, but doing it in the context of the entire organization and how it's not just you giving them feedback, it's how they fit into this bigger picture instead of you.
Yep, that's a great question. And I think, you know, for new managers, when you're in that spot, it is the hardest place to be, right? Because you've got these people, and if you came from within the organization, I mean, they're your friends, you've been with them for a while, and then you're getting sort of direction from the top about what you need to be doing and how things need to be going. And it's about you, right? It all reflects on you, how well folks are doing. So again, to kind of go back to the model that I just talked about, start with the facts, right? These are the goals for our unit, right? And this is your role in our unit in helping us meet those goals. And I need you to perform well and move in the direction of those goals. And so instead of saying you're not getting the job done, right? You can go in with a question that says, okay, so you've had this work to do. You know this is where we need to get. It doesn't seem that you're able to get there. Tell me what you need to move forward and to meet those goals, right? And you're going to learn all sorts of things about people when you have the conversation that way. An example for me, a number of years ago, I had this really bright young person who worked for me, and they just could not get the job done. And I couldn't understand it. I'd taken a chance on them. They had great credentials. What I didn't know was that in their career, there was a piece of the work that they were assigned to do. It was related to a piece of technology They've never used it, had no experience with it. We're embarrassed to admit it. And we're struggling to try to figure out how to make it work. And so when we had this difficult conversation, they said to me, I'm really struggling with this. I can't make it work. So we got them some training and they became a star performer. But if I had only had the conversation based on their output, right, and understanding their output, I would not have learned that. We would have lost a really good employee and it would have been a totally different conversation. You want to kind of create an opportunity when you go in and are a little bit tentative and are asking for people's interpretations, you make it safe for them to tell you why they aren't succeeding. And as a manager, one of the most important things you need to know is why they're not succeeding. Sometimes they're not succeeding because they're in the wrong place, they're in the wrong job, and you got to figure that out. But if you've got someone and you think that they can, be a great employee, you got to help them understand why they're not getting done. I have another example of a young woman who was having a lot of personal issues. And what she really needed was some FMLA time. And she was afraid that if she took it, that would be perceived as a negative thing for her. And we had to have a conversation about how she needed to go do that because she wasn't useful to me and she wasn't useful to her family. But I needed to make her feel safe enough to say, I need FMLA time. And so those conversations just go very differently if you just focus on the facts and then give them an opportunity to explain their version of the story. Now, if you have an employee that's been a problem and continues to be a problem and you don't have goals for that relationship, it's a different deal, right? Or if they've done something that violates company policy, I'm not saying you always need to be having all the feels when you have these meetings, right? I mean, sometimes they do stuff and you need to address it. But give them a chance to explain what's happened. Did that get at what you were asking, Catherine?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great.
Who else? Who else is having difficult conversations or needs to have one?
I'll go ahead. Basically, I have my supervisor just retired, and I have a manager that's not from this country, and so he has a really hard time communicating. And me and him both have very different communication methods. And so my supervisor suggested, and so it comes off as I feel that he doesn't see my strengths when we have a conversation, and then I think that, that hurts my relationship with seeing him as a effective manager. And so my supervisor kind of suggested going in, because if you try to go in and you go with very much like a conversation, he'll try to belittle you in the conversation. You won't really get your point across. So his suggestion was go in there, say, hey, I'm going to say a lot. This is going to be a one-way conversation. I want you to think on it, and then we'll have kind of a conversation to go over everything. What's your thoughts on that kind of method?
So let me ask you this question. How would it go if somebody did that to you?
Depends. I've had it happen. I thought it was pretty good. Obviously, it makes me feel terrible, but I think it gets the point across that we just can't communicate. And if we can't communicate, it's better to have it happen than rather never happen and then have the employee leave because of something like that.
Yeah. So what, part of it too is you've got to think, so what is the relationship going to be like after this conversation? Right? If you've got to continue to work together and you've got to continue to figure things out, if it makes the person feel terrible, how is that going to go? Just an alternative idea is you might go in and have specific examples, right? Go back to the facts and say, we had these situations and these things happen. Let me tell you how that made me feel or how it made another employee feel and why I think that's an issue, and can you tell me why you have the approach that you have? Intercultural communication is one of the toughest things that we face. And it's really important in sort of the modern era because we're all dealing with a lot of people who are from different places. We have a lot of that at AU. And, really part of my portfolio is human resources, and about half the time in human resources is spent dealing with intercultural differences, right? It may be that it's just so inherent in the way he functions, he doesn't even appreciate or understand what's happening. And so, go in with a couple of examples and say, here are some situations that didn't go well, right? Can I ask what you were trying to accomplish when you did that? And just try to see if he understands that. I fear if you go in and say, I'm going to talk and you're going to listen, that person will just shut down. And it becomes then a confrontation, and you're in the middle of it. Or maybe if you're in a situation, sometimes you can't plan for difficult conversations. Sometimes when you're in the middle of a conversation, you can say to someone, hey, right now what you're doing is making it really difficult for me to hear you, or it's making it really difficult for me to have this conversation with you. And it's because of the way this is working. Because he may not even understand that he's doing it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Karla.
Hey, Jacob.
Hey, so I guess, I don't know if I have a direct question, but I'll tell you something that I've kind of struggled with. So, right before the pandemic, like a few months before, my company going through the process of a merger, they started that process. And in my role, I mean, it's important, but if you're going by, top to bottom, my role could potentially be cut out if they had to make a bunch of cuts. So myself and the others in my role, we've kind of, I think, had trouble setting boundaries with not only management, but the people we support on our teams. And that's something I've really struggled with. It's because I want to go above and beyond, yes, on showing value and helping my team in any way I can. But I've had a lot of nights where I've stayed up pretty late, and it's not all because of time management issues by me. It's just because I've had a lot on my plate. And, I need to do a better job of setting those boundaries, but this is just such a difficult time to have that conversation, at least to me, I guess, So I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
No, that's a great question. So I guess what I would say to you is there's sort of a short-term and a long-term approach to this. There are some times when an organization is asking everyone to go above and beyond. I know at AU, for example, when we had to set up all of the remote testing sites, there were a lot of folks working a lot of hours, but you certainly don't want that to be the norm. Sometimes, don't assume that the people above you understand how long it's going to take you to get a job done. Colette is on the call. She's works for me. She's, one of our planning, design, and construction folks. Sometimes we ask people to do things, and what they're doing is not our area of expertise. And so we don't always fully appreciate how long it's going to take them to get something done. And so I do think it is worthwhile to say to someone, I need you to understand how long it's going to take me to get this done, and for me to do it well, and for me to do it with a reasonable amount of balance. And, if they say to you, it's an emergency, I'm sorry, we got to do it, then you got to do it. But don't have your inner monologue mean, oh, they know it's going to take me 3 days, staying up all night, and they don't care, right? Make sure they understand what the job is and how long it's going to take. That's going to tell you a lot about the organization and how they feel about you and how they feel about people who are sort of in your strata of the organization. And sometimes you have to make a decision, is this where I want to be? I did that about 10 years ago. I had a boss with no boundaries, and I was working myself constantly. And I had a conversation about my salary, about my job description, about the need for an assistant, and didn't hear it. And it was tough, but I made the decision to come here, and it was a great decision. And so right now it's a little scary, and maybe, like you say, timing is not the right thing, but you're learning a lot about your organization. If you don't have the conversation, you're going to be up all night doing all these projects, and you're going to feel really unhappy, and that's not going to get better. So I do think it's worth at least testing the waters with them and saying, I need you to understand how big this job really is. And I don't know if your manager can be helpful. I don't know if your manager is doing what they should be doing, which is advocating for you, right? We talked about that a minute ago. Part of a manager's job is to advocate for the team and help educate leaders, educate up, and help them understand how long something takes. My facilities folks, sometimes I'll ask them to do something, and their leader, who's great, Ron, will call me and say, it's going to take us longer, and here's the reason why. And so then we have to adjust up. But if you don't communicate that up, they don't know. So don't assume that they know, that they're killing you to try to get something done. There's a cartoon somewhere, I don't know if it was The Far Side or something, but it said, be careful because, going above and beyond becomes the normal, right? You got to be careful about setting that as an expectation, a realistic expectation of what can get done.
Yeah, thank you. That's great advice. And I definitely need to lean on my manager more. So my manager doesn't live in Augusta. It's all virtual. She lives in Savannah. But I do need to lean on her more because like in my role, I kind of feel like in a way I have 10 managers because I'm in marketing. So there's certain leadership that they were hired because of their leadership skills or because, they've led other companies or other groups before. But so one of the people that in leadership I do struggle with communicating with, as far as I know, was not in a marketing position before. And the thing about it is I'm still kind of new in my career, but I do have over 6 years now of marketing experience. So basically, I know more than this person does overall with certain tactics. And some of the problem is when, this person is giving, her expectations, I guess, sometimes don't match up. And I have trouble explaining hey, your expectations are completely out of line for what you're expecting from me and even her, the people that are working directly with her underneath her. So, I guess just with talking to authority and having those types of conversations that are going to be tense and you might have to, disagree with somebody that has more leverage than you. That's definitely something I struggle with, but I need to lean on my direct manager to help me out with that.
Yeah, well, go back to the facts, right? You're educating them, right? You're not, bucking up to them, right? You're managing up a little bit and start with the facts. So I have marketing in my portfolio. That's actually my background. I have all kinds of people who tell me, oh, I want to make a video. All right, they don't understand that it takes 8 hours to do 30 seconds of video. And so I've had to help people understand that. And over time, the requests have changed. You might try to think of facts, metrics that help your boss understand how long it actually takes to do the work that they're asking of you. And, start the conversation by saying, look, we've had all these projects. I just need you to understand that these are more time consuming than they think, and talk about how long it's taken you to accomplish what they want. At the end of the day, you want your boss to look good, right? Your boss wants to look good. If they have impossible demands on you, no one's going to look good. And so educating your boss, helping them understand so that you all get to the same goal. It goes back to that, what do you want from the relationship? I want everybody to look good. I want everybody to be happy. This is not going to work, right? And, I have employees that do that to me all the time, right? They come in and say, yeah, you've asked for this. We can't get it done. Here's why. And then it's my job to go to the next level and say, here's where we are. Here's what we're doing. I've seen more people get in trouble because they overpromise and underdeliver, right? I would much rather have somebody tell me honestly, it's going to take me this amount of time, and then I can manage expectations. It doesn't do anybody any good to set unrealistic expectations. They'll fail. They just will.
Very true. Thank you. How much do I owe you for the coaching session?
I'll collect later.
Okay.
we'll go ahead and just put up her Venmo account in the chat so you can feel free to.
Well, and just know I'm easy to find, right? As we kind of go through this, my email is just kleeper@augusta.edu. And so this doesn't have to be our last conversation about this. If you've got something that you're thinking about, you know, send me an email. I like to get emails about things other than my work. It's a nice diversion, especially right now. Hi, Colette.
Be careful what you say, Karla.
Yeah, I was just thinking, noted.
Well, I am her boss and I used to be his boss. So I feel like I have the inside track on those folks.
Karla, to piggyback off of what Jacob was saying, how would you stress maybe to a supervisor or management the need for a good like a work-life balance? Because, you know, how do you balance getting the job done when, you know, management's pressing on that, but, you know, making sure that, you know, work isn't, you know, conflicting with, you know, family obligations, any other kind of outside of work obligations where, you know, it can end up consuming a lot of your own personal time?
Yeah, it's tough. You know, and that's where sort of generational stuff comes into play, right? You know, I'm one of those Gen Xers where, you know, we have the hardest time maintaining boundaries for whatever thing happened to us as being latchkey kids or whatever it is. You know, we just kind of work and don't think about what time it is and do other stuff. Millennials are very different. You have a different perception of that. I think that you got to go into those conversations with your boss with sort of a plan for how to work, right? So you got to say, you know, I'll get this done, but here's how I'm going to do it. Or I need this time. Here's how I'm going to manage my work to get that done. So you got to kind of understand who your boss is. If your boss is a baby boomer, they're an 8 to 5er, right? They think most work should happen between 8 and 5. Gen Xers, yeah, we're kind of all over the place. We're more about the project than anything else. Well, if you have a millennial boss, they're going to be more amenable to the work-life balance. But I do think it's important for you to set boundaries and expectations with your boss and then hold yourself accountable for the use of your time and how things are going to kind of move forward from there. So, for example, if you were having a conversation, like I had a boss that would call me 24/7. Like I would get calls at 3 o'clock in the morning. And he was a boomer. That was a different deal. He was a former politician, and so his life was sort of different. But I finally just had to walk in and say, I can't function if you call me at 3 in the morning, right? That's not acceptable. That's not okay. I need a weekend with my family. It's not okay to do that. And at the end of the day, I finally just had to go because he just believed that was the way we needed to work. And so sometimes you're just a wrong cultural fit. But I think in general, you can have a conversation with someone where you say, I'm going to work during these times. You can call me all you want. But then after this time, I've got this kind of work to do. You know, one of the great things that's happening as a result of COVID-19 is that we're all thinking differently about work schedules. So 4-day weeks are on the table. Teleworking is on the table. You know, different kind of shifts. All kinds of stuff is on the table that didn't used to be on the table before. And so if you have an idea about how to better balance your work and your life, now might be the time to float it out there. I have some employees, you know, we're going to work different shifts. We're going to work 4 days. And they're thrilled because it allows them to fit into their childcare schedule better and, you know, other sorts of things. So now you might get a better reception than you would have ever gotten before. But at some point you may have a boss that just doesn't share your view of work-life balance. One resource for all of you, you've all heard of the Gallup organization, right? Probably in terms of polling, right? But they do a bunch of other stuff. And one of the things that's fascinating to me about them, I worked on a project with them and was actually in Washington, D.C. at their headquarters a couple of years ago. And they have started working on happiness. They want to measure happiness among people, which is kind of a weird sort of thing to measure. And they want to do it worldwide. But a part of that is they want to measure work-life balance as a function of happiness. And they have an amazing set of data for managers about how to manage their workplace, how to keep people accountable, how to make their employees happier, how to keep them more engaged. And so if you go to the Gallup website and kind of look at some of their stuff about managers, they've actually produced a book, and it's called It's All About the Manager. And it says that those mid-level managers are key to employee retention and productivity and other kinds of stuff. But they talk about a lot of these issues, work-life balance and other kinds of things. And so if you're looking for facts, if you're looking for data, the Gallup organization is a great place to go. And I recommend it to anybody who is currently a manager or wants to be a manager. It is a treasure trove of stuff about how to advance happiness in the workplace. And it's not, okay, again, I'm a Gen Xer, it's not all the touchy-feely stuff like we all need to sit together and have all the feels. It's really about concrete action steps that you can take as you manage your employees. And I've found it incredibly valuable. Who else? Colette, do you want to have a crucial conversation with me?
No, I have this wonderful new job, and like it's amazing. So I don't have any crucial conversations. I could have used this a year or so ago, but
Well, now Colette, you made a big change, right? I mean, you left one work environment for another.
yes, and I was previously a manager and had to, like Catherine said, kind of advocate for one group to another group, being a middle manager. So I've experienced a lot of that, and but yeah, with my current position, I don't have to do any of that, not yet at least. But with all of them, I mean, work-life balance was a thing at my previous job. Managers not understanding, or people above me not understanding what it took to do the job. They found out after I left.
So did you have a crucial conversation that you thought went particularly well?
I did my best.
Or one that went particularly badly? I'm just trying to figure out, what did you do that you felt like it went really well, or that you wish you would have done differently?
Well, okay, I had crucial conversations with subordinates. That went well, and let's see. I think one of the problem with this person was their productivity was very low, and they took too long to do a certain job. But I had an advantage because I did that job previously. So in my talking with her and trying to find out what the issue was, like you mentioned before, try to have that conversation. Okay, why are you not being as productive as I think you should? And she told me why, but because I had done the job before, I said, okay, well, instead of doing that, do it this way. And while you're doing this, do that. So it helped. I was able to provide some insight or a better way to do what she was doing. And it did make her more productive and happier. And she's like, oh, well, that worked out so well.
So then you became the hero, right?
That one time, yeah. But yeah.
I mean,
but just because I've done it before,
Yeah, well, you know stuff, right?
Yeah.
I
had the flip side of that. I had a crucial conversation that did not go so well with people above me because it didn't understand how long it took to do certain things, and they were hard set on their parameters. So I told when I went back to my staff and said, okay, well, this is the thing they want us. It was about work hours. My staff need to come in earlier because it took so much to do the work, and the people above me didn't want them coming in that early. They want to limit the hours. And I told them, okay, we've got to limit the hours. And they said, well, we won't be able to get everything done. And I said, then don't.
Right.
I said, well, then don't. And then when we stop being able to produce like we should, they'll see that we need to come in earlier.
It takes a little bit of courage sometimes to have a crucial conversation because you're telling somebody something that either they don't know or they don't want to hear.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's hard to do that, but you have to do it. If you don't, you just kind of continue to, what's the definition of insanity? You keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, right? It's not going to be different.
Yeah. And once after you have that conversation, at least you can say, you have been told. We had this conversation. If this fails, I tried to told you. So.
No, that's right.
That's just my little input.
That's good. I am an old professor. I do call on people.
Noted.
Is anybody else, looking for a promotion? Are you trying to plan? I know it's hard with everything that's going on right now. It's not really the best time to ask for that. And those are important facts to have too. Although I will tell you, in some industries, it's a great time. If anybody in here is in IT or some of the service industries, man, they're going crazy.
Karla, what would you recommend for someone trying to maybe looking at getting into higher education administration?
Run! No, I'm kidding. It's a business, right? A lot of people don't think about it as a business, but it is. And so you want to try to get the right experience to be able to be effective in that business, right? So tell me what your background is.
A little bit of event planning, marketing, community relations type stuff.
Yeah, okay. Particularly for state institutions, we're always looking for people who can come into the organization who have connections to the community, an understanding of the community. In the area that you're talking about, we're really looking for people who can help us tell our story. I'm a big believer in stories. I think we all have a story. That's how we understand the world, right? When somebody asks you what you did today, you don't just list off stuff, right? You tell a story. If they ask you about your life, you have a story. And I think higher education is no different. And it's more important than ever that we're able to tell a story of why we do what we do. I think for most organizations, they're looking for people who can help them tell the story. And so, unless you're looking for a teaching role, which has a particular set of prerequisites that you have to go through, there will be jobs in higher ed, particularly in marketing, communication, and events. That's a young person's sort of business, and there's a lot of turnover. So look for those job postings, but when it's time to apply, focus on your ability to help tell the story of the institution. I think the difference between people we hire and people we don't hire is we tend to hire people who we feel like have the capacity to tell a story. Even in events, right? Our events have to tell a story about why someone should support the institution or why someone should be part of the institution. But that's a cultural thing. Whenever you look for a role in a company or an organization, you want to kind of figure out, what is their culture and how do my skills help build their culture? Because that's what people are interested in doing, especially now, right? You've seen all the ads on TV. They're not advertising products anymore. They're advertising the culture of the company. I saw an ad. It's hard to even remember what the companies are when you see some of the advertising. Because it really is all just, we're about bringing America together. That's what we do. But there was a really strange ad the other day. It was like for pizza or something. You didn't know it was pizza until the very end, but it was really about, I was kind of weeping because it was this very emotional. It's about bringing families together. But they're clearly trying to push out their image. But higher ed is great. I love it. I was in law school for 2 years and then I got better. I had a chance to teach and I taught and I saw what I could do for students and it was transformational for me. And so I left and went and got a PhD and went to higher ed. But part of the culture, especially here at AU, you'll hear Brooks Keel say very often, we have one priority. It's our patients and our students. And the provost rolls her eyes because that's two things technically, but it's really about the students. And so can you tell stories about how we can change the lives of students or patients? See, I've told you what to write in your cover letter when you apply at AU. So there you go. What else? What other crucial conversations? James, you've been up in that left-hand corner. I feel like I'm in the world's worst game of Hollywood Squares.
Yes, that's our new norm, right?
James has the best background. It looks like you're, in Aspen.
No, this is my home.
That's lovely.
I'm on my back porch.
I'm usually on my back porch, but it's not covered and it's too wet. So
It's my favorite place in the house, and it's become my office lately. So,
me too. It's a lot easier to work from home if you're outside.
So my crucial conversations lately, my wife and I are self-employed. So we have crucial conversations with each other.
Please tell me you didn't fire your wife yesterday.
Oh, absolutely not. Two different
Or
businesses.
furlough.
No. She was closed most of the month of April. Her going back to work was a crucial conversation and how to keep maintaining her business. And then with mine, how to create new business. So it's more of conversations we're having with, they're supportive conversations. But those are the types of conversations that I'm having now in my life, which is not really, I do work for a large corporation, but it's not really corporate conversations or the team building is with each other.
Yeah.
Now, our hard conversations is that we're remodeling our basement and we're having conversations about our shower and how to build it. And that's not going as pleasant as our business conversations.
The stupidest thing that I did, I sat in my office in our house the first week of the teleworking. And we've lived here, it'll be almost 6 years now. And I've hated the wallpaper in my office since we moved in. And so what did I do? I walked over the first week and I just pulled a strip of it off, right? So then my husband and I decided we needed to strip the wallpaper and begin to do the wall. This is the world's toughest wallpaper. It took us 2 weeks to strip that room. Like layer, I had never seen anything like this. It was awful. So now my office is in the living room. And we haven't picked a paint color because we can't. So I feel you. At least this is just paint, not a basement, but man, that's gotta be.
Yeah, it's a whole other floor of our house, and it's actually going to be a bathroom and 2 separate full rooms. One's going to be a bedroom and one's going to be a living room. But our conflict has been figuring out what we're going to do in the basement. So, and when it comes to business, just her business is probably at about 50% of what it was before COVID-19. So our conversations have been how to generate more business for her. And then, my business is also very relational and, learning new ways for me to promote my business also, because both of us, she's a medical massage practitioner.
Sure.
So of course, during the Brian Kemp's order, she couldn't practice at all.
Right.
But it was a very hard decision to actually go back to work without setting certain parameters in the way that she runs her business to make sure not only does she keep herself safe, but keep her clients safe also. So that was a long conversation, and that was definitely a dialogue. Most everything about our business is dialogue. The basement's been monologue.
Her telling you how it's going to go.
Right. and me struggling with understanding.
Go with God. I don't know what to say about that. Yeah. My husband is a theatrical designer, as Scott knows.
Yeah.
And like our yard lighting has theatrical gel in it because he didn't like the color temperature of the lighting. And so I do not make decisions really about the color and all of that. And I didn't realize there were so many shades of gray. It's more than 50.
I'm learning how many shades of brown there are. It seems like there's thousands.
Yeah, I don't. At this point, I've just kind of been worn down. I don't care anymore. Just pick a color and we'll order it curbside at Lowe's. But yeah, I get, we're talking about going back to work. I stole somebody's joke.
Yeah. Well, I have, I'm an agent with New York Life Insurance Company.
Sure.
I have crucial conversations with people on a daily basis. That's just.
Yep.
the
So
reality.
you can do the actuarial tables and tell us how long we've got.
Yeah. But
Great.
I wanted to be on this meeting because I have difficult conversations and I wanted to learn more about how to do it better. So I wanted to listen and learn.
Yeah. No, it's the kind of thing that you just have to do. And just, telling you all, I mean, I've got crucial conversations coming because we're talking about, some reorganization. And I think it'll be good for folks, but I've got to get the facts together before I can start. It won't affect you, Colette, it's other people. So, but
Happy.
people don't like change. My boss has a joke. It's a terrible joke. He says the only people who like change are babies. He tells that joke all the time. But it's hard to manage through change. Right now, we're all managing and change. I don't think there's an organization that's going to come out on the other side of COVID-19 without changing in some way. And that's, some people take that better than others, but it's a little bit stressful. And so you got to have conversations about how to make those changes. And, kind of starting with why. Simon Sinek, who's the great change management guru on YouTube and TEDx and all of that stuff, his mantra is start with why. And I think that's right. Tell people about why we're having to make the changes that we're making and, help them understand why that it can be a good thing, but also be willing to listen to them about how it needs to be enacted and done. Don't think that you have all the answers. Maybe if I had to have one word that sort of characterized the best approach to these crucial conversations is go into them with some humility, right? Don't presume that you understand what everybody's thinking and what the right answer is. If you do that, you'll drive through with your point of view, but you may very well miss an important opportunity to do something better. But have a little humility when you have them and be willing to admit that you can be wrong. That's a great example for your employees if you're a manager.
But I'm sure Colette would attest that you're never wrong.
And honestly, I tell my folks the first day, they kind of laugh at me. Every once in a while, I'll send a long email and they'll say, oh my God, the professor is back. I worry when people don't tell me I'm wrong, right? To me, that's a problem because I know me and I'm wrong. There are lots of times when I'm wrong and I expect to hear that. And I don't want to hire people who are just going to sit and nod, right? If I wanted that, I'd buy a group of bobbleheads and that's who I'd have my meetings with. There are things I don't know and I am more than happy to admit that, except to my husband. And you just need to tell me, as long as you're respectful, right? I mean, that's the other thing. I feel like we should all be respectful in the workplace, but if I'm wrong, tell me. I want to hear it.
I've had conversations with my employees at my previous job where I would tell them very specifically how to do something. And then I would tell them, do it this way. If you don't, you'll end up doing it wrong. And then I would say, ask me how I know, because I've done it wrong many times. And I would always let them know that, like, I've done it wrong. Don't do like I did. This is how we're going to fix it. And that actually, they were more receptive to my feedback when I tell them that.
The hardest thing, where's David? David's over there now. In marketing, the world has changed, right? There's TikTok and, all this other crap out there now. And, I like words. Words are good. Words send messages, you can be pretty directive. But I'm learning more about all this stuff. In fact, one of the things that I'm trying to do during the COVID-19 thing is to educate myself more deeply on some of these technology things that I have a glancing acquaintance with now. And so I signed up for this whole short course on all this different technology. And so I'm learning the Google algorithms and, normally my marketing people tell me all about that stuff, but I'm trying to understand, the behind the curtain sort of things for all that stuff. And so I've been sitting through all of that And it drives my people crazy because I'll send them questions. I'm like, I watched this video, and they're like, oh God, she's watching the videos again. But I feel like that's sort of my responsibility, is to learn as much as I can. But I will be the first to admit that is not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is figuring out the core messages for higher education and what this institution is doing. And they put feet underneath of them. But yeah, that technology stuff is important and confusing. I played Pong. That's where I started in the whole world. I remember the first iterations of MTV, so that's how old I am. I was excited about getting the cassette tape put in my car. And now I'm trying to understand the Google algorithm. So there you go.
I think even for us, I know that even being on Zoom all the time, I think David teaches me things every time we log here. But thank you so much, Karla. Thanks, Jacob. We appreciate you taking the time with us, and we're pretty clever. We want to be. We're also, you've got a lot of like the marketing people on here too. I know Paul's our science guy, but
yeah.
And James, I can definitely relate with you, because I actually today changed auto insurance companies and actually had difficult conversations that were pleasant on both ends. So counting that as a win for the day. Does anybody have anything else for Karla?
Karla, did you do you mind putting your email in the chat? Or is it or we might have it, Catherine?
Oh crap, what have I done? For some reason I tried to load it, but it won't.
There we go. Yeah, she has it.
Okay.
Yeah, just put in. Yeah, I would love to reach out. I definitely thought you did a very good job, talking about stuff that could help us professionally. But I even might have some questions for you for some stuff personally, and I'm just
Sure.
really love your feedback, so I appreciate it.
No, I'm happy to do that. Augusta is a great town. We moved here 6 years ago, and my husband is a native Texan, and Texans are like Georgians. Moving them out of their native territory is a challenge. But we have loved Augusta, and I am all in on trying to do what we can do to build the capacity in Augusta. And so I would be happy to, email with any of you or text with any of you or whatever you need to do. I will not TikTok with you. I'll just tell you that right now. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on a bunch of different stuff. So I'm happy to do whatever I can. I'm so excited about organizations like this. I wish, the Gen Xers never did anything like this because we're not joiners. So I wish something like this had existed when I was at your stage of career development, but I'm happy to do whatever I can for you. Because Augusta's lucky to have all of you. I can't do that, Mike.
That was like
I'm just a huge
yeah, back in the day.
right now. Yeah.
Instagram was my time, so I had to figure out all the
this is about
chorus angles,
right? That was the key when I was starting all this. But what can I say?
We just appreciate you, Karla, and
organizing all of this.
Of course. We're just happy to, again, have people like you in the community that are willing to pour back into professionals, and especially young professionals, and then for all of you for joining us, board members and community members alike. And before we wrap up, I also wanted to thank the Augusta Women's Club. They are sponsoring our webinar Wednesdays. Anna, our president, also serves as their president this year. So we've been able to forge a partnership there. And they've actually given us two $25 gift cards to Cole Watkins kayak tours. So actually, by raffle number, Colette, you are the winner of the Cole Watkins tours. He does really cool, just regular kayak rentals, and also does kind of moonlight tours down the canal and river. So really fun stuff. Just send us on the facebook.com/YP Augusta, Young Professionals of Augusta page. Just message me there your address, and we'll get that sent out to you.
Awesome. Cool. I didn't even know there was a raffle.
There you go. Well, Catherine, invite me back. I would love to come hang out with this group again.
If you just want to, like, the whole list you had of ideas, if we just want to, like, go through, like, a week, and we'll, maybe we need, like, a couple weeks to get through all of those and then ask all of our questions, but we're just so appreciative. And
I miss teaching, and so this is the closest thing I get, so that's exciting.
We will definitely do what we can to keep bringing you back.
Cool. Well, just let me know however I can help. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope everybody has a great rest of their week. And again, make sure you sign up for our newsletter, ypaugusta.com. We've got information coming out about future webinars, including June 10th. Jonathan Davis, who's currently over at SRP as one of their business development managers, but is also on a variety of boards, is involved with arts and with nonprofits and with faith organizations in the community, and has been a producer and an on-air executive and has worked for the city. So really great wealth experience there, and is going to be talking about making a difference and leaving a legacy in your community. So ways that we can, continue to plug in as young professionals and build on that. So excited for that. Appreciate all of you again, and thank you, Karla, and we will look forward to seeing everyone again.
Have a great week.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Karla.